I call to order our meeting, our commissioner briefing meeting. Thanks everyone for being with us this afternoon. Does anyone have any questions about our 5 p.m. agenda? All right, we will move right along. And Eric Kreger is joining us with a property tax refund request. Oh, and I think Kurt Euler's joining him. Good afternoon.
Oh, you're joining me. Okay. All right. Commissioners, how are you today? My name is Kurt Euler. I'm one of the county attorneys. And we are here to give you a briefing on a taxpayer tax refund request that was brought to the tax office pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 105-381. The taxpayer in question is Delta Express and Carolina Transportation. They are two companies, I believe, owned by the same conglomerate. So I will be speaking to as both of those companies as one. They have requested a refund of some business personal property taxes that they paid for tax years 2021, 2022, and 2023. What has happened is, okay, so they are requesting a total refund of $216,719.40. This is basically the difference between what they paid in business personal property tax versus what they would have paid had they been treated as a public service company. And I will try to get into more of the details. This is a sort of a convoluted fact pattern, so please bear with me. And if you have any questions, please let me know. But under the North Carolina General Statutes, business personal property is valued by the county and the tax assessor based on schedules created by the Department of Revenue. However, some companies are treated a little bit differently. Public service companies, and in this case, when I say public service, it's not an electric company, but more of a public transportation. They're basically a shipping company. They are treated differently where their assets are valued by the Department of Revenue, but also they're kind of prorated based on the mileage or the amount of business that they do in Buncombe County. So that's kind of how we got the difference. So sort of the timeline is that Buncombe County conducted an audit of these companies based on just their business personal property tax returns. And what staff found is that their listings were incomplete. So for 2001, the staff and the company revised their business personal property listing. The companies ended up signing the listing forms, basically verifying that this was the value of their property. And then they paid their bills and did not appeal for 2001. But they were just basically being treated as any other type of business in Buncombe County. In 2022 and 23, their forms once again did not reflect some of the discovered assets. So again, the staff worked with the company to amend their listing forms. The company signed those forms, paid the tax, and did not appeal. So we get to last year in 2024, where staff looked at their returns and asked the Department of Revenue whether the Department of Revenue believed that the company's rolling stock. And Eric, what is rolling stock?
That is the trailers and the motor freight that would ship the inventory now the terminal.
So basically the trucks and the trailers, and whether those listed should be treated as a public service company. The Department of Revenue looked into this and said, yes, they should be treated as a public service company. So for 2024, their business assets were listed as a public service company, and they were billed and they paid their tax. However, the Department of Revenue also sent them a listing of what the value of their properties would be had they been treated as a public service company in 2021, 2022, and 2023. Based on receiving this information, the company has then asked that Buncombe County refund the difference between what they paid for business personal property versus what they would have paid as a public service company. So under North Carolina law, the governing body, and this is North Carolina General Statute 105-380, the governing body of the taxing unit is prohibited from releasing, refunding, or compromising all or a portion of taxes levied against any property within its jurisdiction, except as expressly provided in General Statute 105-381. And in that statute, you can issue a refund based on three things: a tax imposed by a clerical error, all right? But that clerical error has to be on the county's part, right? So on a tax bill where we misplace a decimal point or something like that, not an error on part of the taxpayer. Another grounds for granting relief would be an illegal tax, right? If we are doing something that is a violation of the statutes. And I'll give you an example. Suppose we are taxing property that is being held in Haywood County. We can't tax that. We can only tax the property that's in Buncombe County. That would be an example of an illegal tax. Or a tax levied for an illegal purpose, where we are taxing somebody outside of the parameters of 105 or 153A-147, which, you know, for Health and Human Services purposes, public safety, things like that, we're taxing them for a reason that's not authorized by the General Assembly. So the question, and only the commissioners are allowed to grant this refund. So staff has examined this, and basically staff has kind of come to the conclusion that it is the property owner's duty to list their taxes and list it correctly. In this case, the property owner never said, hey, I'm a public service company in 2021, 2022, or 2023. So we do not see how we tax them illegally, because they were basically treated like any other business. Had they asked or applied to be a public service company during those years, then we would have looked at it and possibly, but we can't retroactively go back. So we don't believe that there's a clerical error or an illegal tax or any grounds to justify the refund. And so, you know, the company never applied to be treated as a public service company, much like other property tax exceptions or specialties. Normally, it's the taxpayer's duty to come and say, hey, I'm a charitable company. You need to treat me differently and prove that. And that's sort of what we're dealing with here, is that they never came to us, and we don't think that going back 3 years would satisfy that. However, that's ultimately up to the commissioners. I think the only argument that they could possibly make would be to say that we should have been treated as a public service company, but you didn't do that. But I don't think that that argument holds water, because the statute specifically states that every public service company, whether incorporated under the laws of North Carolina or any other state, whose property shall prepare and deliver to the Department of Revenue a report showing such information. So the burden's on the taxpayer to declare themselves a public service company, not the county. And in this case, sort of we're in a weird situation, because we're trying to help the taxpayer, you know, and try to help them as opposed to put them in a worse situation. So it would be staff's position that we don't really see where there are grounds for granting the refund. However, Eric, do you have anything else that you'd like to add?
No, you got it.
So that's basically all that I have. If you all have any questions, so basically what will happen is at the next meeting, at your next meeting on the 18th, you will either vote to approve the refund or deny it. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
I've got a pretty straightforward one. It doesn't seem to me that we really have, unless we want to break the law, much choice on that. The statute's pretty clear about not fixing clerical errors that we didn't commit, right? So that, as I see it, it's not even a discretionary, we can hash out whether or not this is fair. This is really just clear statute saying you can't do this until you have one of these three good reasons.
Right, and I think that, and we've had this situation before with GE Capital, if you recall. We also had them asking for a refund. However, in this case, I think what's different is that that the property wasn't taxed twice, where they had the same property that was owned by two different companies. In this case, they were taxed for their business personal property. So they've paid their taxes. So we don't think that there's any double taxation in this case.
How long have they been doing business in Buncombe County?
That I do not have an answer.
I didn't hear. What did you?
Oh, he said that the abstracts go back to at least 2012. We can get you that specific.
No, I don't need that. I just wondered. Now it comes up, but they have been doing the same thing all along, right?
We'll verify that for our next
Okay.
meeting, sir. So no
Okay.
action today. This is to get you prepared. We will take action next week.
18th. Are there any other questions?
Are they going to be here on the 18th? Or have they expressed interest?
We will. I know that you allowed GE to speak at the last meeting, so we'll definitely let them know that this will be on the agenda on the 18th, and if they wish to speak, they will be able to.
Not required, but just wanted to give them.
And especially if we did that for GE, let's offer them that same opportunity.
Of course.
All right. Thank you both. Oh,
Is there any other materials you need us to bring forward next time?
Yeah, if you don't mind bringing anything the DOR is able to provide you, so we can just share with them. Just because the DOR provided this documentation doesn't mean that we are going to necessarily do the exact same thing as them. We have different statutes covering each one of us.
Yeah, I do want to make sure that we're clear about that. The DOR, basically, their role in this is just to value the property, and that they have not promised anybody a refund or given any opinion as to whether or not they are entitled to a refund. That really rests with the county.
all right. Thank you both. All right, Avril, Helene update.
Thank you, Commissioners. Since we're still dealing with Helene, we want to make sure we keep you and our residents up to date on what we've been working on. So today, the topics that we will cover would be an update from FEMA individual assistance, then housing, our permitting process, debris hazard mitigation grants, Small Business Association, and community recovery resource meetings that are upcoming. And first, we'll start with FEMA. I think Ina was here or Bob. I see both. See Bob here. I don't see Ina, Bob, so you tell me who's leading the show. Okay, there's Tom as well. Todd? We would advance the slides for you, or you can use the clicker to advance the slides.
I haven't seen the final slides, but we haven't. Well, we'll do our best. Thank you. Bob Spence.
I've known Bob Spence a long time, so I know Bob can cover this.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So I know who will be the one who speaks more eloquently on some of the in or outs, but with that, the first slide, and I'll go over some of the big high points that I think that we should look at taking over. Ooh. That's what was doing for me.
You are doing a good job with every hurdle coming your way. There you go.
Did you get? How's that? Sometimes you want to work quicker? No, I'm just kidding. So looking at the individual assistance totals, and these are effective from January 30th, and they don't reflect the current stats for today. And, a lot of the data inaccuracies you may see are really based on the day we pull the data, which has been a thing that we've been hard working on. One program will pull the data on the 30th, and one will brief on the 3rd with data that's fresh. So I'm going to give you the data I know off the top of my head. So currently, as of today, we have over $112 million that FEMA has put out in the county and for assistance. Of that, based on the number of households, you have 102,000. 87,000 have applied for assistance. Of that 87,000, 56,500 have received assistance, about a 74% approval rate of that 87. So you're looking at 74% receiving some type of FEMA assistance in their hands. So based on the number of households, that's a metric that is high, and that's good. That means the money's getting out to the public, to the people that need it. Typically, at this stage, it may be in the 50% range, typically on households that apply. But FEMA has done a lot of due diligence on trying to clear people who have been deemed eligible to make sure that they stay eligible and can receive some type of funding. Now, a lot of those inaccuracies that we'll see on the difference between people who are eligible but haven't received money yet, it may be they need additional paperwork. And that's always an animal we're always fighting. It may be that they check the box saying they have insurance, but we don't have a copy of the insurance policy. So, of course, we can't duplicate a benefit, and we'll just have to work through it. We work with them on obtaining that document so we can get them in the approval process on it. The breakouts of how it's broken down, you can see on the slide with the numbers. But again, I don't want to lose the true thought that we have over $112 million out in the hands of the citizens of the county, and that's a big one. And we're at the 75% range. Those are the high marks that we need to focus on. There are going to be people who fall through, and we're working through to making sure that if they fall into ineligible, that we're going to case manage them into getting acceptance. If a citizen thinks that they don't have all the paperwork, they received a letter from FEMA on possibility that we have not been able to make a determination yet that, what you qualify for, we encourage them to go to the nearest disaster recovery center at one of the 2 locations we currently have, and to resolve it. That's the quickest way to resolve that. It may just be that they can help get a statement or something else to prove that they live there to get that case moving forward. So,
I'm sorry, we're going to pause you real fast. You mentioned 75%. And that's just not a number on the slide. So could you repeat what percentage you're referring to?
Yeah, so 75 is a percent. So on this data, when it was pulled, it's not in here. It's buried in my internal mechanisms on the approvals. So I provide that data directly to your staff and leadership so they can see the true nature. It's one of the numbers that, if this was my slide, I like to see that number because it's a positive point. It's showing that it's getting down to the end user. It's getting down to the person who needs that money. And it's not, because we hear a lot about who's not getting money. And people, it's not getting to the right hands. But the 74% number is that number that says, yes, the majority is getting out. So I'm a positive person. I like to think positive. Doesn't mean we have everything, we're not trying to get it to 100%. And we're always trying to do that.
So 74% of applicants
who have been
receive
approved.
Okay, got it.
70% of the people who've been approved eligible. So the other good metrics that we're looking, and I don't want to just speak on the exact number on some of this. So our transitional sheltering assistance, which are people who are in the hotels, our current number today is actually 655. At the time of this report, I think it was a little higher. So we're down. So that number has been dropping who's in the hotels. At the same time that number is dropping, our increase in rental assistance has gone up. So in other words, people are moving from the temporary hotels to more permanent solutions, whether they're renting their own place or moving back to their houses, or they're getting apartments. Our direct lease number, which is also our deal with the trailers, or where we're doing the leasing through an apartment or an Airbnb or something, those numbers are also progressing correctly. So Direct lease is a little slower for us. You know, we may have one or two a day, new people move into a mobile home or into a direct lease, but those numbers are ticking, they're growing, they're not dropping. One of the metrics that did show up in direct leasing is out of the 56 that we have found direct lease for, 3 have returned back to it. 3 have said, we don't need it no more. We're moving back to our home, and gave us the 3 units back in this report, which is a good sign too. So that once we do a clean and sanitize of that, then that goes back in the inventory. We can move 3 more families in and stuff. Another metric on the direct housing is we have identified enough lots, commercial lots, private lots, to handle our units than what's on the list. So we don't have to search any more than that. We have that there. Got anything?
It's good to stay in touch, and
Okay.
the number of people we're not in touch with that are in TSA or.
All right. So here's the direct housing overview. And some of the, on that, most of the hold up on some of this is dealing with some of the, we have a daily meeting, of course, with your staff where we're troubleshooting where the sticking point is. Sometimes right now it seems like a lot of it's with what we call our licensing in phase. It's where we're trying to making sure we have Duke Energy has their power meter on the spot. The pad is prepared. It's been inspected on our side. And we're just working through that. So there's a lot that are pending inspections or waiting for Duke to install a meter right now. We have a lot of lots that will be available. And once that can get done, then the house could be moved onto the lot, tied in. It could get inspected and go forward. The other holdup we kind of see too is people passing the background check, you know, going through to get through to be ready to move into one of the facilities. So that's part of FEMA's program where they have to, you know, go through a background check to verify who they are and stuff before we can put them into you know, one of the units on it. On this slide too, I think last time there might have been a question on this, so I'll cover a little about, you know, what we see as available properties. When FEMA did its original analysis, I think we looked at like 1,400 available properties, and based on that data, that some of the rents were kind of high, so we looked at some of the assistance. So up to 200% is what we're going off the going rate. So for a 1-bedroom, I think it's currently at $2,600. 2-bedroom, that's what we're willing to pay for housing assistance. But when someone applies for housing assistance, doesn't mean they're going to get that money. They need to bring us a copy of a lease, a place they found, and we're going to reimburse them up to that amount, ever what the lease says, if they found a place. And then they can apply for the rental assistance and keep that rental assistance. Good? Good?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, this is a big one. Registration deadline, which was supposed to happen on the 7th or the 8th this week. It's been extended for another 30 days. So individual registration assistance, people have another month to apply. We encourage people not to wait for that month. And if you haven't applied, apply now. Apply as soon as you can. You know, you can do it through disasterassistance.gov. You can call the FEMA 800 number, or go to the Disaster Recovery Center and apply in person there, or at one of our outreach events that we do. I think this week we had an ag event at AB Tech, and we actually registered like 15 people who had never been registered this week there. So it was a good win there. But we just encourage people to get out and register. Just because we have the 30 more days, let's not go any further, but it does extend the period, so you're not against that time frame more. So that's a positive. We just got that approval yesterday, and that was really good on it. With that, any questions? I think that's the last slide.
Yeah, I would add one thing. What comes up further in at Todd Hoos, External Affairs with FEMA, what comes up at about this time is we start talking about those individuals that may have difficulty placing. They may have a number of pets. Pets to FEMA are family members. It's acceptable. But we need to place them in a place that'll accept a number of pets or some of the different breeds, or a person that has challenge with a background check. FEMA's committed to housing those individuals who are eligible to housing. So it's going to happen, but some of the individual cases are a little more challenging. And we have a number of people in TSA, the hotel system, who have yet to contact FEMA. So they're in the hotel, and they're potentially eligible to stay longer beyond the next deadline, and they need to reach out to us. So
It's important to encourage anyone that's not in touch with FEMA, contact us, and just as important, everyone's situations change. And so as they change, as their needs develop, as their needs change, it's important for them to call.
Todd, thank you for that. I hear you loud and clear on the folks in hotels needing to reach out. I guess what has been done and maybe what could we do more together, state, local, FEMA, to reach out to those individuals from our end, knock on their door literally, that sort of thing, to communicate with those folks?
We've had wonderful support from County of Buncombe, from our partners here. And some of that has been with individual assistance. They've helped us put together a flyer, and we've gone to the major hotels and put those flyers out to encourage people to contact us. We've also had our disaster survival assistance teams, the boots on the ground, going to the larger hotels and doing everything we can with our partners and with any individuals to share the message that those individuals may be transitioned out of that TSA, out of the hotels, only because they've not shared with us their situation. So anything that you can amplify for us, and certainly our partners with Buncombe County have been tremendous in helping us share the word.
Did you mention?
If you want to? She's the real expert. We're just kind
Oh,
of
yeah.
the sideshow.
Yeah.
My sincerest apologies for running a little late. So just to expand on what they were talking about earlier on the TSA, the Transitional Sheltering Assistance folks, we're also working with NCEM. And so they're also sending folks as our team to go out to the hotels to meet with the survivors. Also, another part of it is the disaster case management. So disaster case management has been approved. The grant has been approved. And so with the state, it was awarded to the state. So they have it, with service providers, and they are meeting with the applicants as they're going to the different hotels.
And did you mention do we know how many people are still in hotels and that also overlap with the group that we think should communicate with you but hasn't? Is that data clear to you?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes, it is. In fact, every single one of them, we've exhausted every avenue to calling them. Of course, it depends on what they checked off in the registration. So whether it is a text message, phone number, email, even whatever address they give us, we'll send them that, communication. Also keep in mind, a lot of them have set up what we call a DAC account, which is they can go into online, right? Go into their account and see anything, the latest and greatest, and even to the point of us trying to contact them. But unfortunately, the struggle is real, okay? We have come into such a difficult time to get into contact with a lot of folks. And it's not just the ones that are qualified or eligible or approved for direct housing, FEMA's direct housing, but those in general that are currently checked into a hotel. And so I'm not gonna, try to make it good or bad, but the reality is a lot of folks are trying to stay away from contacting us and getting in touch with us because they know they should not be in the hotel. They're not eligible to continue to stay. So a lot of them are like, hey, you know what? If I don't get in touch with them, they're not going to find me. I'm going to continue to stay in the hotel. And so that's why we have the teams at the hotels, in the lobby. We've had, like what Todd was saying, the flyers. And, there is a privacy issue between what the hotel knows, what rooms they're in. We cannot go into, room 201 and knock on the door and ask them because, one, it is a safety issue because we don't know what's on the other side of the door, right? They could potentially, whether it's the FEMA staff or the state staff or even the case management staff, potentially is danger. So all we can do is we'll let them know there's flyers at the hotel lobby, at the hotel front desk, letting them know that we're at the lobby. Please come and meet with us.
Ina, do you know of the 500 or 600 or so in the hotels, how many of those have not been in contact with FEMA? Do you have that breakdown?
Well, Buncombe County is 98 that are still not in touch with us. I'd have to look at that list to see. I thought it was like,
I think 98 is the current list of who may be coming ineligible from the 31st date notification, which means, I usually have a loud voice. I don't need microphones normally, but the 98 was the rough number that we had on this current notification list. Now, not to be lost in there, the county, your county and your folks who are working some of the case management in the county are also identified, they have a data set to help identify those people too, and they have done outreach too on those people to try to get them to, hey, let us know what you need. Because if we can get a hold of them.
These are the
we're
county
trying to say
navigators?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk to us.
Talk to us.
Talk to us. You can't just elude us, right?
Yeah.
And then, hey, then I can stay type of thing. So currently, right now, of the 647, those that are expecting to check out on last night on Friday, check out on Saturday, the 8th is 126. So we've attempted every avenue to get in contact with them as well, being downstairs at the hotel. And keep in mind, there are some that are out of state as well that are staying in hotels. I don't have the exact numbers of how many from Buncombe County is currently out of state. I'd have to go back and do another filtering and figure out how many are there.
We have that on the upcoming slide for you.
Okay.
My number was based in Buncombe County. The others that add up to that are outside of the state, statewide, and maybe in another state too.
But I'm sorry to harp on this. I think I have a couple more questions here, but are either county navigators or these state folks knocking on these folks' doors? I understand the security concerns, but it seems like there's a relatively small group of people that we know we need information from. We know where they are physically, it sounds like. I'm sure it's case by case, but
It is case by case.
yeah,
But if you're asking if we are going to knock on the doors,
Yeah.
no, we're not.
yeah,
It is definitely a safety issue. We've had it in the past in other states where in the beginning when we started doing TSA, Transitional Sheltering Assistance, we did go and knock on doors, but some not so good outcomes happened on that where, FEMA staff were not just hurt, but some of them were actually shot at. So since then, we do not, and because we don't want to put anybody's safety
We'll address that on our slide.
at risk.
okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think on your slide, we have included some of the TSA non-eligible in your case management and state case management. In other words, they've been identified to be case managed within the state and in your county.
I can provide a more holistic update on that. Lillian Govis, Director of Communications and Public Engagement. We are reaching out to our survivors via text messages. We are in hotel lobbies. We are doing everything we can to target our communications to our survivors who are in these spaces so that they know. I mean, I don't answer the phone when I'm getting a phone call from an 800 number like, sorry, Red Cross. I've been sneaking around for a minute. You haven't been able to catch me. But we are texting them and making sure that they have that opportunity and they know here's what you need to do in order to re-up that process with FEMA. So to your point, Commissioner Sloan, we are working in non-traditional ways outside of what Ina was referring to make sure that we are making that individual connection with our survivors through FEMA, through disaster case management, through our community navigators, and then amplifying it as a whole with our additional layered on resources.
And to add to that, some of the other ways that we've done it is actually if in conjunction with the hotel, if they're willing, they would actually disengage their keys to their room so that they are forced to come down to the lobby, to the reception, and then here we are. So then they would have to meet with us. So we kind of think outside the box of ways in partnership with the county and of course other health and human services departments.
I guess my last comment, I've never done this before. You guys have done this before, and no one else in the room has. But it just seems like most people wouldn't want to live in a hotel that were living in some sort of other situation. And I'm sure there are some, and maybe that magic number is 98 or whatever here, but it just seems like most people, the overwhelming majority of people, wouldn't want to live in a temporary hotel situation.
And
right?
you're kind of sort of right,
Okay.
but this is not your normal people as
Okay.
we would categorize as, because they have their home, they want to rebuild. Because in fact, a lot of folks, they don't even want to check into the hotel because we have thousands that are eligible for TSA that has never checked into a TSA hotel. And why is that? Because they want to stay close to their home that is under repair. And one could be, potential looting, They want to keep an eye on the contractors to make sure that their repairs are being done in a timely fashion so that they can get back in there. They don't want to be taken out of it. So that's your norm, right? So on the not norm side is those that maybe where they're staying at that hotel is better than what their pre-disaster resident was.
I just want to ask a practical question because I'm not completely clear. Can you give me a number of the number of people who might have been excluded from some form of relief due to background check purposes? What does that look like for you versus for us? Because I've worked with people in these cases with free clinics before. It's ranged from people who had an arrest for marijuana back in 2004 to people who are currently facing serious crimes in court. What does that barrier look like for y'all, and how many people are we dealing with? Because that's something our community is going to have to be able to address.
So I can tell you the number is not very high, and the different types of background checks could be felony or financial. So dependent on the commercial park, or even in this case, some of the direct leases that is property management, it depends on what is required from them. So now those that can't pass the background check, we have secured a commercial park that does not require a background check. So in those instances, we do offer them that place as their last resort. And if they don't take it, then they will not be eligible for FEMA's direct housing program. But we haven't come into any of those yet. And just like what the Todd and Bob have alluded to earlier, every day we meet with the Buncombe County folks in the morning, and we talk about the specific cases. If any of the cases does surface up that they can't pass the background check, that is something we're working with the counties to see if there's another entity that can support us, or figure out what it is, the specifics. Like he said, if it's just like a marijuana charge that was 20 years ago that still shows up, or whatever it is. But we're working through those, and we haven't come up with any specifics number per se that we're having a difficulty getting them housed in a temporary unit.
Thank you.
Sure.
And our next slide is actually.
I've got, sorry, one more
I'm sorry.
question. First off, thank you all for your work. Your partnership with the county has been invaluable. And I know that because of your work, there's been a lot of funding and assistance to impacted families. So thank you. And I'm also glad that the ag event went well. Thank you all for doing that. I'm curious, are you all planning to do any more of those ag events in the future? Was it successful enough to warrant having another one in another part of the county?
Do you know if you want to answer?
They have been very successful. And in fact, we're looking at possibility of additional on Friday, and then going beyond that, because we'd like a little more lead time so we can get more people the opportunity. It has connected us with a number of organizations that traditionally we don't connect with, and identifying essential tools and opportunities for those self-employed, the farmers and artists and many others. We have some new programs in FEMA that give them an opportunity to be reimbursed for some of their damaged property. So there is a discussion with that. We've had wonderful support from Congress, wonderful support from the communities, and so we're pursuing that. So, to date, there is nothing yet scheduled, but I know a number of them are on the books.
Right. And I know that we have, I believe it's 4 upcoming community sessions that you all will be at. So thank you for being part of that. It's a community Buncombe County events where we're going to have folks. Any questions, they can come to those. Really encourage folks in the community to come out to that. A couple quick questions about the temporary trailers. I'm curious, as the need for those goes away, what's the life of a trailer look like after it's housed a family?
So a couple of things. So it depends on if they are a homeowner, right? So if a homeowner is currently residing in our temporary housing unit, transportable, whether it's a travel trailer or a mobile home unit, and if they are eligible, we will offer and sell them the unit. Okay. So some folks, they're permanent or long-term resident, or, what their plan is to live in another mobile home, maybe because pre-disaster, it was a mobile home that got damaged or, destroyed. So that's one of the things that we will offer, and that was approved for North Carolina. And so that's a work in progress with the individual applicants. And of course, that's the only time that we actually look at income. And so in this instance, in this disaster, a one price for all has been approved, and that is based on HUD's low income. So if they can show us and demonstrate what their income is, their, you know, their property, all that stuff, they will be eligible to get that price. Now, if not, how we determine the cost of the unit is, of course, like a vehicle. So think of it as a vehicle, right? Once you drive it off the lot, there's depreciation. So the calculation for that is however long the person or the family that is housed in that unit, that takes into consideration, and that price comes down. So it could be anywhere from, depending on the size of the unit and whether it's a mobile home unit or a travel trailer, it could go anywhere from 12,000 to about 31, 32,000. But the one price for all can go from 8,000 to, I think it caps out at like 18,000. So it depends. We're also working with voluntary agencies for those that don't have the funds to do that. But also keep in mind, a lot of them have received the max grant for that, which is the $42,500. If at any point the applicant has misspent the money, the volunteer agency is not going to augment what they're missing. Now, if they show us the proof that they have building materials like wood, and try to fix up their damaged unit, and it just comes to the point where, like, you know what, I can't do it anymore, I'm better off just purchasing this unit that FEMA let me live in. Then we would take that into consideration to take out whatever they use to purchase materials, and whatever they have left, that is what we're going to sell them that unit. That's just kind of an example.
And part of it, I'm thinking about the surplus of trailers, and also you're hooking up sites that the trailers can then attach to, and we're looking for opportunities for nonprofit partners in the county in the future. I'm just kind of curious what that would look like if we did see a need where we could say there's surplus trailers, we've got sites, or maybe nonprofit partners can put those to use in the future. I'm kind of trying to think through what those opportunities are.
No, absolutely. And it's a great way to think about how do you expand your lack of, right? Your housing crisis or a housing resource. So what that looks like is with the sales, we call it sales and donations. So in the donations part is where we would, if the state was interested in taking some of the units, it would also entail the upkeeping, the maintenance, all the money that needs and is required to maintain the unit. If the state has the ability to do it, that's when we will sign off the units to them, and then the federal government will walk away and say those units no longer are federal property. Now, the other part of it too, the other next part of the donations is if there is a voluntary agency that is interested in some of the units, for example, you have someone that has their private property, we have a unit on their property, and the volunteer organization is willing to purchase the unit for that family, they can do so too. And that's why the long-term recovery groups in every single county has a long-term recovery group that potentially has donors, whether it's philanthropic or other, voluntary organizations or private nonprofit type of thing, that have set up donations in each of the long-term recovery group. And that's where, working with disaster case management, they can present the cases to the LTRG, long-term recovery group, and say, hey, I have, John Smith and his family is requiring this unit. This is what happened. This is what's needed. This is what we can do. And they're like, yep, we got it. We'll go through the transaction of the sales, which is no different from, for example, like selling a car, right? We sign over the bill of sale. They make sure all the permitting is up, right within the county, because now we're talking about a permanent unit being placed on their unit. So all those things need to be adhered to. And if they have done all that stuff, then we'll go through and process that sales. Now, if the unit was in a commercial park, what's required for the applicant is that they have to then secure a lease agreement with the park owner that they're going to basically take over that pad lease. And then what they do with it after we close the sale, it's up to them. If they want to move that unit to wherever, along the river, okay? Because we talk a lot about the flood hazard areas. We don't put flood hazard areas, right? If they want to take the unit and drop it over there after the closing of the unit, it's on them. They pay for the transportation of the unit. They pay for the hookup, because once we sign it off, FEMA, again, walks away. That's their possession.
Thank you so much. And then one last quick question. I guess last week I was part of the Continuum of Care point-in-time count, and I met with a woman who was on TSA. She said she's waiting on rental assistance. She was concerned that she may not have help with the deposit. Could you just speak briefly to how you help with deposits for folks that are trying to get into
Sure.
apartments? Thank you.
So with deposits on some of these folks, they've gotten the displacement. Some of them have gotten initial rental assistance. And these funds are usually to help them to secure a rental unit for a deposit. Now, let's say, for example, if they spent all that money to get a long-term hotel, and they weren't in a TSA, they were in a hotel, they used all their rental assistance to pay for that room, and now they actually found an apartment or a house or whatever it is, and they don't have the deposit to do that, then what we do is we look at it as an unmet needs case. Those we will then try to circle our volunteer agency liaisons, whether it's through the long-term recovery group, if it's already set up, and if not, some of the volunteer organizations will support and get that deposit for them.
Thank you.
Thank you all. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Commissioners, next, and we are going to talk a little bit more about TSA housing with Matt Cable to talk about where we are in housing.
I appreciate FEMA's overview on TSA, so my slides will be brief because we've covered quite a bit of this, but there are a few details that I think are worth highlighting. So we did receive new data and information. It gets a little bit more specific about the population that's currently in TSA. You'll notice on this slide that we're referencing 768 households that are currently in TSA, which is up from the slide that FEMA just presented earlier. That reflects the fact that within a couple of days, that population can shift. And so that's up 61 households from when we presented this information to you back in January. We do provide the breakdown on this slide of the households that are within Buncombe County. So these are residents of Buncombe County that are still in Buncombe County in TSA, and then those that are outside of the county in TSA. When we last presented, we had received notice of those who would be exiting as of February 8th. So their last night of eligibility would be February the 7th. At that point, there were 108 households in Buncombe County that would be checking out. 98 of those still remain, so we've had 10 leave since that notice was issued. Outside of Buncombe County, there were 29 in that same group and category. That's now dropped to 27. We also have, on Friday, eligibility determinations were issued again. So the specifics there include that 125 households that are currently in Buncombe County are slated to check out by February 22nd. The balance of that number, 362, are approved to remain in TSA through March the 6th. So that's where we stand in terms of that population breakdown. There are a number of criteria and qualifications that FEMA mentioned, being responsive to phone calls, providing additional information. So it may be that those that have been determined ineligible in that time period will be determined to be eligible and be able to continue to stay, but without additional interaction, those would be the exit numbers. And a lot of this was covered as well in terms of outreach. I'll just point out that on these slides, we kind of indicate when that effort began, adjacent to each type of activity, and whether it's still ongoing. The first slide here just references the county's efforts. In terms of our interaction with folks, guests that are in TSA, our approach, hotels will not provide the room numbers, and so we're doing very similar outreach in the lobby, flyers. We have had hotels be very cooperative in doing under-door flyers for us, so like they would a hotel bill or receipt, they'll slide them under the door, but to all guests so that we're not necessarily aware of which guests we're reaching. And then this is the summary of those different agencies that Ina was referencing that are involved in case management and where they are. The only one that wasn't mentioned is the state did redeploy the multi-agency shelter transition team. So that was used when we were originally closing down the emergency shelters and transitioning those folks to the rescue mission operation at Gold's Gym. So they reactivated that to help with guests that were exiting, do that kind of first push large volume of exiting folks. And then just as a general update on recovery progress, we highlighted a couple of trends that hadn't been mentioned yet. Housing units that are complete, we're now up to 55 houses that are leased in. That includes the direct leasing as well as temporary structures that have been placed, or temporary units that have been placed, I should say. And then, as they alluded to, rental assistance continues to increase. So we've seen a 17% increase, and we're now up to 769 households receiving that rental assistance. At this point in recovery, it was also, we felt pertinent to share that we have started working cross-departmentally on a more permanent housing solution focus. So, in those first days, very short term, in the last few meetings, we've been talking about more intermediate strategies, and now we're looking at more permanent strategies as those short and intermediate strategies continue. So we are looking at more permanent solutions, things like Commissioner Ball was mentioning about, what happens at the end of FEMA's use of their trailers and manufactured homes. So those kind of questions, that will be the focus of that effort, is to really understand how we create more permanent solutions and don't see housing that we needed before the storm that we need now after the storm leaving our community. So those are things that they would focus on, as well as funding opportunities around permanent housing solutions. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Is going to talk a little bit about permitting and the activity we've seen in their permitting department.
Good afternoon. Bob Haynes, Director of Building Permits and Inspections. As you may know, that building permits are at the core of our development efforts, especially as it relates to rebuilding. My staff has worked directly with FEMA and the residents to both expedite the repair and the rebuilding of storm-damaged properties to ensure that it is done safely and as quickly as possible. Since the storm, my staff has performed 2,094 damage assessments, and we have issued 568 emergency repair permits. And per state legislation, we have waived over $263,000 in permit fees. Our current processing time for any permit related to storm damage, or even a brand new permit for residential, the complete turnaround time, depending upon the person and what they have, if they have all their documents ready, 3 to 5 days. For commercial, it's 5 to 7 days, just due to the fact of commercial sometimes is a lot larger. So typically, our turnaround time for residential plan review is 1 day, commercial is 3 days. We've maintained that for the last 15 years. So we try to get them in and out as quickly as possible. So I'd like to also discuss how Helene has affected our normal permit activity. The slides are from October 23 to 24, and also from October 24 to January 25. So you can see how it has impacted everything. So during that time frame of October to January, new single-family homes are down 72% as they were the last time. Townhomes, however, have saw an increase of 78%. Apartments are down 2,800%. However, for the whole calendar year, we were up 63% for the total. So Helene has definitely impacted new construction for this time, but overall for the year, we're kind of maintaining. So what we'll have an influx of is the renovation permits as opposed to brand new permits. So inspections and permit numbers will still maintain about the same. Revenues will be slightly lower because of its renovations don't cost as much as new permits. I feel like it's going to be like a COVID-related recovery time. We had a slow impact, then it resulted in supply chain issues. Not sure what these new tariffs may bring. I know the Home Builder Association has discussed that, and they're looking for that to increase prices and slow everything down again. So hopefully that won't happen. And for our inspections, If someone requests an inspection today, right now, they get that inspection tomorrow. So if you have an emergency situation where your power needs to be restored, we typically do those the same day that the request comes in. So does anyone have any questions about some of these numbers on the slides? Because some of them's pretty way out there for number-wise. Any questions, period?
No questions, just thank you. I know that's not a easy challenge to have ahead of you, but we appreciate your work.
Thank you, Bob.
But what I
thank
want to
you.
make sure we emphasize before Bob left is the timeline, because we've been hearing that there've been holdups in the permitting process. And what Bob is sharing with you is that we have been working hard, and he's prioritized Helene repairs and recovery. So that has not been the case. So I wanted to make sure that you heard from him and see the numbers, that his timeline has not changed as much. So if you're hearing that feedback, please share that so we can at least get to that specific house and see if they don't have all the documents in place or if there's things that we need to help them with.
Okay.
And we've not kicked anyone out of anywhere. So
And Avril, do you think that's the same for septic permits? Because that doesn't fall under you, right, Bob?
That doesn't fall under
That's
me.
Jennifer?
my department processes those,
Okay,
but I don't know about their turnaround time for inspection.
okay.
If you're hearing issues about specifically like sewer, we can make sure we get that addressed as well.
Okay.
But we were hearing building permits at the time is why we
Yeah.
put them on the agenda.
If we hear anything specific, we should elevate it to you, I guess.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, sir.
Will do.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Bob. We appreciate it.
And next, I see Dan and Christy on debris.
Jerry Edwards, Commissioners, good afternoon. Dane Peterson, Buncombe County Solid Waste Director, and here to provide an update on debris management processes ongoing in Buncombe County. I'll cue up the first slide. So right-of-way debris removal is still ongoing, and as of January 23rd, there's been approximately 814,900 cubic yards of C&D and vegetative material removed, as well as 63,390 tons of soil. When this material is collected from the right-of-way on the grapple trucks, specialty equipment, it's taken to one of the temporary debris sites that are located throughout the county that is operated by the Army Corps of Engineers on those locations. On the screen here, you can see some of the temporary debris sites, or these sites, Beacon and Swananoa, the Cane Creek Pool, Lower Brush Creek, Julian Shoals, the Old County Landfill, and Inca Commerce Park. So these sites went through a review and approval process through NCDEQ, and the debris is taken to locations outside of Buncombe County for permanent disposal. So those materials, as they come in, it's not as quick as same day to get those materials taken out, but processing occurs on site, and this material is hauled out to permanent disposal. You think about materials like vegetative, where there's processing involved. That's a grinder, horizontal grinder that grinds up the vegetative debris, turns it into mulch, and that material is being hauled out currently to Windy Cove and Spruce Pine for beneficial land use. It's a land application. There's also some slope stabilization project going there, so that mulch is being reused in another county. The C&D, or construction demolition material, that is being hauled to a Republic landfill in Foothills, and the soil is being taken to waste management in Johnson City. So when you think about these temporary debris sites, the requirement will be that these locations are brought back to pre-existing conditions after the operations of the site are completed. Next topic, we'll talk about private property debris removal. So overall, we've received 2,501 applications. That was as of January 29th. Applications still coming through. 215 of those applications were for demolition, and 25 of those are from commercial properties. 95 of the commercial property applications are total. 1,172 site inspections have been completed. 1,078 completed applications have been provided to FEMA. So community canvassing with our partners with Tetra Tech continues with enhanced focus on local business. Intake centers are scheduled to remain open through the end of February. The intake center locations are in Fairview, Swananoa, Barnersville, and Black Mountain. And the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has awarded contract. And good news on this topic, debris removal for private property has begun today. So those operations have started. Things are changing by the hour. I apologize for not getting pictures and updates, but we will have better information and a good update your next meeting for a briefing. So excited to see that, and that was a major step. So talking about the intake centers for private property, one important thing to note is the Asheville Mall location has changed. That location has changed. So Fairview Library as well as location Weaverville. So please note the hours have changed. Locations, Fairview Library, again, Fairview, Swarno, Barnesville, and Black Mountain, those operations are still ongoing. And please, if community members have questions, the call center, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., please call in, and there'll be a representative there ready to answer and address those questions. So locations of private property debris removal pickup. So the first batch, when I say batch, that was the first contracted batch that went through the intake centers, was reviewed by county, went to FEMA for their vetting, and then was sent to Army Corps of Engineers for tasking for the actual contract work. So the first batch was 300. You can see the disbursement of the locations where applications were submitted, fairly evenly distributed there, but you think about the city of Asheville and the county areas. And my understanding is this number has increased significantly in the past couple of days, where we understand the first batch was 300, the next batch of 500. We understand that there's around 700 total properties that are contracted right now with Army Corps. So as with many of these missions and scopes, you'll see things start a little bit slower, but there'll be many more crews and many more locations that are getting going in the next few days and weeks. This is an example of the placard that will be placed in the yards for folks that are getting the private property debris removal. You see it has information as far as the property, initial site assessment, if there was any household hazardous waste debris removed, and the date debris removal was completed and when the parcel clearance is completed. Our understanding from the contractor is a 72-hour notification prior to debris removal starting. So that's the goal. Tetra Tech has provided a lot of information for the owner's contact info. So that's their steps, is notifying 72 hours prior before, so that the owners have that heads up that operations are about to start. Still discussing private property debris applications. You can see again the spread: unincorporated Asheville, Fairview, Weaverville, Fletcher, Swananoa, Arden, Black Mountain, unincorporated Black Mountain, and Barnesville all having representation as far as folks that have applied for private property debris removal. Another really good update for today is waterway debris removal has begun, and that started this weekend. We were very excited to see that. This picture was actually taken down at Azalea Road. So excited to see that. And again, similar to the private property debris removal mission, you'll see some dots start coming online. You'll see equipment start getting in the waterways. I know some of the first initial locations, Azalea Road, around Moffett Road, and a couple areas out in Swanano, that you'll start seeing that activity and then spreading and expanding from there with many, many more crews. So the equipment that they're using is really cool. I've seen a lot of equipment, but some of these things I have never seen. So it's really neat to see the specialized equipment that they're using, but it's all very purposeful too, because waterways are challenging because of all the checks that you have to do to make sure that environmental, historical, cultural, that we're not causing more damage to areas by going in and already devastated, but not causing more damage. So the ingress-egress point is they've set up substantial timbers, so they don't just go off the bank anywhere they want to go. They've got a specific entrance and exit point so that they're protecting the embankment where they're going in and out, but it's also that one path where they can go out with these machines, take them up top to a staging area where it's monitored, and then the grapple on-road trucks take it off to the temporary debris sites. So each piece of equipment uses biodegradable hydraulic fuels, fitted with low pressure PSI tires, so with the goal of doing minimal damage as possible with this recovery process. Removal of tidal property. So county has contracted with 4 local towing companies to remove storm damaged property such as vehicles and vessels. Vehicles in the right-of-way are being tagged in unincorporated areas of the county, and vehicles are eligible per our local ordinances to be towed 7 days after the vehicle has been tagged. As of January 29th, 9 vehicles have been identified and tagged for removal. EOC Operations Field Crew have identified the 9 vehicles in the right-of-way, and after the initial 7-day term, at that time, the sheriff's office will be notified, and a deputy will be sent to the location. The deputy will inventory any personal property that remains in the vehicle, and will then radio in the tow for dispatch. Dispatch will send one of 4 contracted towing companies based on rotation. And once the towing company arrives, they will photograph the vehicle and take it to storage where the owner of the property will be notified. So as far as additional vehicles, 34 vehicles have been identified through through Tetra Tech and our inspections in the field on private property. So we'll be working to address these in phase 2 of the property removal. This has certainly been a challenge, talking about title property where you've got the ownership and you're required to notify and make sure that the boxes are checked on that end with the owner, but also with FEMA, because obviously the work that we do, we're not saying to the property owner of the vehicle or whatever that is, boat, we're sending you a bill for this. That's not what this is. This is the county is working. We've identified these towing companies, and we're trying to make sure and go through the process to ensure that there's a reimbursement path that we understand FEMA has for us. But I want to be clear on that. This is not something where we're going after the owner and saying, pay this bill or come get your car. That's not what this is. So that is the process. And
Dane, I got a quick question on
it's
that.
a question.
Oh,
Yes, sir,
perfect
Commissioner.
timing. I did hear some concerns. Folks thought that we were ticketing these vehicles that have been washed away. I mean, obviously, if your vehicle's washed miles away, you're dealing with a lot. And folks were concerned that they were receiving tickets. I stopped and looked at some of the tags I saw on the side of the road. It doesn't say anything about a fine. It references a general statute, but can you confirm that folks are not getting a ticket for their car being swept and left in a right-of-way?
Absolutely. I can 100% confirm that. Yes, sir. It is not a ticket. It's a notification up front to say, hey, this process is starting now. And, insurance factors into this as well, private insurance. So we want to make sure that folks have had the opportunity to go through with their private insurance process. But yet, yes, that is the first step in that. And then that vehicle, title property will be taken to one of the towing company's impound yards, and notification will happen there as well. So there's multiple steps for that, but no, it is not a citation in any way.
Good. And, it's important that we let folks know some way that car, if you've been trying to figure out what to do with it, that tag is your opportunity to say, it's coming, it's getting moved, but it is not a fine. And we can't just go out and move things. We obviously want to give folks a heads up.
Yes, sir.
It's that removal is coming.
Absolutely.
Thank you for all your work.
Thank you.
Dane, quick question on the waterway removal, the cool picture of the vehicles you showed us. Do you have a sense of the volume of equipment that we have to take on the Herculean task of cleaning out our?
So
It's not going to tell me much, but it's the question I got.
as far as the waterway mission, Commissioner, is that?
Yeah. How much help do we have?
There's going to be a substantial amount of crews coming. And I think as we're starting with those 5 locations, Azalea Road, Swananoa, and Whitson Road, I believe, are some of the first locations we're starting. That's going to expand from there. Now, as far as the exact force, I don't have an exact count on that. It is going to be substantial because when you think about waterway, all of this is challenging. Right-of-way debris removal, but waterway is hard to get to. It's wet. Everything's wet and it's heavy. So when you get a chance to see these waterway operations, it's slow moving, and there's going to be substantial force on these, Commissioner. And I'll try to get more information as far as what we can expect to see with those crews. But these first 5 sites are going to expand very quickly. But you think about the contiguous work that's going to happen also, where we've identified locations where immediate threats of debris maybe could impact a downstream bridge. But we know there's debris pockets that we've identified outside of that. So that scope will grow a little bit as well with the field crews in the water. So it will be substantial for us.
Dane, can you tell us a little more about the debris removal on exit ramps? It seems like in some particular parts of the county, there's still tree debris, on guardrails in those areas. I can give you some more specifics, but will those eventually be addressed?
They should be, Commissioner. And yeah, Tim Anderson and his group, we're certainly working with them in tandem as far as the right-of-way. We have a memorandum that was of understanding that was executed with DOT for removing debris along their right-of-ways. But obviously, a lot of that is in partnership. So there's a lot of focus on identifying those areas, especially with second pass getting going in a lot of our zones. So we'll have those. I would encourage if those specific areas, if you know of those, let us know. We'll make sure that we're the contractors addressing those.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Dane? All right. Thanks so much, Dane. We appreciate you.
I saw Raphael was ready before, so now it's Raphael's turn to talk about hazard mitigation grant.
Hey, Raphael.
Hey, good afternoon, Commissioners. Raphael Baptiste, I'm the County Strategy and Innovation Director, here to talk to you about the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program. So Steve McEwen, who's the state's Hazard Mitigation Officer, came and presented to you all on January 7th to give you some information. My goal today is to kind of expand a little bit on what he shared and provide you some additional updates. So just as the 20,000-foot level reminder, hazard mitigation is a federal program that's available after a presidentially declared disaster. It's funded and approved through FEMA and administered within North Carolina by North Carolina Emergency Management. The basic purpose of hazard mitigation grant programs is to say, hey, we had a disaster. There were a lot of costs associated with this disaster. Let's make investments in the community that are going to prevent this from occurring again. That is the basic purpose of HMGP. It is a competitive program. There's to be $1.5 billion allocated across North Carolina for all counties impacted by Helene. So if you considered the damage here in Buncombe County, but also the damage across western North Carolina, you're talking about a lot of damage in a lot of areas with need, competing for what seems to be a very large pot of money, and it is, but the reality is with the need out there, this might be one disaster where there is not sufficient HMGP funding to meet the needs. So it's got a couple of focus areas. It wants to reduce community-wide risk reduction. It wants to improve the resiliency of key infrastructure and resource lifelines, encourage conservation within the floodplain, and increase future mitigation planning. Those are the fundamental goals of this program. Within HMGP, there are 3 specific programs. All 3 programs are ones that Buncombe County anticipates utilizing. The first program, which is the more well-known one, and what Steve talked most about on January 7th, is the acquisition, elevation, and reconstruction of private property with Buncombe County. Essentially, this means that a homeowner voluntarily applies for this program, and either their property will be acquired and purchased at fair market value by the state. The state will demolish and clear the property and transfer the deed to us or the municipality it's located in with deed restrictions that prevent future development. They may elevate the property several feet up to reduce future risk damage from flooding, or they might reconstruct a property. And this is eligible for both residential and commercial properties. This program is our #1 priority because this is where we can provide significant direct assistance to our property owners here in Buncombe County. The second program that you can use hazard mitigation grant program funding for is to stabilize landslides and mitigate them for the future. This was a large landslide event, so we are grateful for the opportunity to use some of these funds to assist with this. The third one is funding for government projects to improve resiliency and decrease risks from future storms. So this is where we, as a county government, apply for funding for projects that we will actually administrate. This could be making public infrastructure more resilient, wildfire risk mitigation, or community-wide projects that increase resiliency and reduce risks. All 3 programs run at the same time, but this priority list aligns with North Carolina Emergency Management's priority list. They're going to focus on acquisitions first, then focus on landslides, and they will focus on the community projects. So we're lining up with them. This is data as of last Thursday. I've received additional data today to tell you that we are now at a point where in Buncombe County we have achieved 286 applications for acquisitions, elevations, or reconstructions, representing 290 properties. But what you can see is we have applications in unincorporated county, the city of Asheville, the town of Weaverville, and the town of Black Mountain. Overwhelmingly are applications for acquisitions, followed by elevations, with a couple of landslides and a couple of reconstructions. We have received 23 applications from North Carolina Emergency Management that have been approved for the program that we will process within the county and within our partner municipalities. But you can see a map here. The red triangles represent the proximate area where these properties are located. You can see there's a couple of one-offs in the northern part of the county, on this part of the county, in the southern part of the county, but the majority of them are in the Swannanoa area, and there you can see a concentration. So this generally lines up. These are properties that have overwhelmingly received significant amounts of damage, and that's why they were in that first batch.
And I want to make sure we point that out. This is the first batch because I don't want folks listening to this think that they were not approved yet. This is just the first batch of the first 23 that came in earlier.
So thank you, Avril. So the state will be sending us batches. So as they process our applications and applications in other counties, they send us them in batches to allow us to move aid as quickly as possible. HMGP is a program between the state of North Carolina and Buncombe County, but we had a lot of properties within our municipalities that are eligible for hazard mitigation grant program. So we are working through to develop interlocal agreements to allow our municipalities to participate in this program. We are asking that municipalities pick one of two options. Option one is that we will work with them to develop a decision-making criteria to evaluate properties. They will then use that criteria to make a decision as to whether they want to acquire a property that is in their municipal limits. If they choose to acquire the property, instead of the deed to the property coming to Buncombe County, it would go to the municipality. The second option is they can choose to develop their own decision-making criteria, make their own decision, and again, if they decide to acquire the property, that property would deed it over to that municipality. That being said, if they were choose to not acquire the property, the county would retain the right to acquire the property and maintain the deed to that property, or to choose to as well decline the property. So we will be bringing to you at a future date action related to these interlocal agreements.
Can you say that one more time? So if they choose option one if they choose option two with their own criteria, it'll still come to us for approval or denial. Is that right?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
So we're essentially, with either option one or two, we're asking them make a decision.
Yeah.
And then once they make that decision, we as the applicant through the state will actually process the application and sign on their behalf. Current status, North Carolina Emergency Management is processing these applications. We've received the first 23. We anticipate receiving more in the near future. Property owners can apply through October 31st of 2025, so they have plenty of time to apply, and they are still applying. We are promoting the program. The application is through the state, but residents are more than happy to call the Buncombe One call center, and we will have someone that will work with them, either on the phone or in person, to submit and process their application. We're also actively working to identify potential public infrastructure projects for that third program. We will have, in the near future, two requests for board action from you all. One is a request for delegation of signature authority. This essentially allows for the county manager to sign the application forms that we then send to North Carolina Emergency Management. The second would be the authorization and execution of the interlocal agreements with our municipalities. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions? All right. Thank you, Raphael.
Thank you.
And you see them standing already. SBA is here, and they're going to talk a little bit about their loan programs.
Good evening.
Welcome.
And I do want to thank Chairwoman Edwards and the rest of the commission to invite us here and speak. My name is Lane Davis. I'm with the Small Business Administration. And I have my colleague David Fierro and Jovan Palmer with me. We're here to give you an overview of our SBA disaster loans and what exactly that entails.
Welcome.
So we offer 3 different types of loans: home, business, and economic injury. For home disasters, there's 2 categories: as a homeowner and as a renter. Homeowners can be eligible up to $500,000 for real estate property and up to $100,000 to repair or replace personal property, including automobiles. For renters, only the $100,000 would apply. For businesses and nonprofits, they may be eligible up to $2 million to repair or replace real estate, business contents, inventory, machinery, and equipment. And for businesses as well as nonprofits, the economic injury disaster loans would also apply, and it would be $2 million as well for working capital and ongoing expenses. It does not cover the loss of income or profits. A lot of people are reluctant to go for a loan, but in disasters, it can be very helpful. So we like to amplify the benefits of taking on this loan. There's no fee to apply. Interest rates are very low. No payments and no interest accrual are there for the first 12 months. No prepayment penalties, no late fees. Funds are available prior to insurance settlements. The terms are very flexible, up to 30 years. You may also apply for mitigation funds. Loans can be modified, so if you are not needing the entire amount that is being offered, you can take a lower amount from there. There's no obligation to take these loans either. No collateral for loans up to $50,000 for homeowners and renters, and $100,000 for business and nonprofits on presidential declarations. You can, again, accept the partial amount, and you may be eligible for refinancing existing mortgage or relocation. The process to apply is one of many ways. You can go online to lending.sba.gov. Anytime you're having technical issues, you can call 833-572-0502 for assistance, or you can go in person to our business recovery centers or disaster recovery centers, where an SBA customer service representative can help you in person. And to locate any of those centers, you would go to lending.sba.gov/search-disaster, or you can call our customer service at 800-659-2955. And the deadline at the moment was just extended to March 8th for physical damage for homes and businesses, and June 30th for economic injury loans. And anything you would like to add?
Yes, thanks, Lane. So I'm sure you're wondering how much activity there has been. So here in your county, there's been disbursements of $43.4 million, and that involves just a little bit over 1,000 different loans to folks here in Buncombe County. And just for your information, if you want to see how that compares statewide, we have dispersed $105.3 million, and that's for roughly 2,400 loans. So that's kind of what's happening. And, you know, we realize that, as Lane mentioned, if you're in a disaster, the last thing you probably want to think about is a loan and another financial obligation. However, the fact that the terms are so favorable means it's just another option for people who are trying to recover. Now, this goes back a ways. You can tell you how old I am. I was living in Homestead, Florida in 1992 when Hurricane Andrew hit. It was a Cat 5 storm. So I went through the process as a homeowner of trying to recover, and I realized it's not a quick process, and it takes time. And sometimes having loan funds available can help you get from where you are to where you want to be. So that's really all I wanted to add, Lane.
Can you give us any context of how either the dollar amount or the quantity of applicants kind of compares to another semi-analogous disaster? Does that question make sense?
As in, like, comparing it to another state, or
Just another experience you have in terms of, is this a small number of applicants given what happened to us? Is it a large pool of applicants? You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
So I live in Florida, right? So we get hurricanes every year. It hits somewhere in the state. The fact that you don't have the same density in population as some areas, for example, where I'm from in Florida, Tampa, Orlando, along the Gulf Coast. I mean, you have a lot of damage. When I first got here, I was amazed at the level of damage you have, but you don't have the number of people, the population density. So you look at Florida's numbers, you go, well, it's much higher, a lot more applicants, a lot more money. It's because there's more people there. But in terms of the level of damage, this is unprecedented. It really is.
Thank you. We appreciate your work here.
Thank you. Thank you.
And lastly, Commissioners, Lillian is going to share a little bit about, and just remind the community about our community resource recovery meetings that are coming up.
I'll be brief. I believe Commissioner Ball plugged us already, but we do have these 4 upcoming community events. The first one is actually next week in Barnardsville. These are drop-in style events, right? So if you can't get there at the beginning, that's okay. If you can only get there in the middle, also good. At the end, we'll still be there. We will have a number of partners who are joining us from our mobile health unit, who will be there to provide vaccines and health checks outside, to North Carolina Emergency Management, disaster case management, our friends from FEMA. We'll also have the Legal Aid of North Carolina there to help connect people to those resources. American Red Cross has some new supports for survivors that they will be sharing during those events. So we will have those there, and if people need a little or need a lot, we will have our tables there to help them. Nathan Pennington will be there to talk about floodways and planning. Bob will be there to talk about permits. Drew Reisinger's folks will be there to talk about real estate needs and printing off birth certificates. Should someone have lost their birth certificate due to the storm, he'll be able to print those on site. Our library folks will be there printing off library cards on site if someone lost their card or needs a card or doesn't have a card. All of that will be available at this resource series. So we're looking forward to helping connect with our community members. That first one is in Barnardsville. That's kind of a small footprint. That fire station isn't the biggest place, but we feel comfortable we'll be able to meet that community's needs there. Then we'll move on to Owen High School, Reynolds High School, and wrap it up at Lester Community Center. And we see these as kind of our first approach of going into the community for the first time since the storm, gauging what resources are being accessed, what we're hearing from the community, and how we can help future events really be tailored to meet those needs as we all recover from the storm. We talked about last time our community recovery resource guide. This is a really high-tech video of my phone screenshotted. And this kind of covers what we have in this resource guide. So we've got TSA eligibility, housing, food and goods, health, financial and legal help, and we are continually updating this guide. So just because it was published once 2 weeks ago doesn't mean it wasn't updated again yesterday. Of course, we have our DRCs that have moved to Fairview and Weaverville Town Hall. It's updated, and we're continuing to make those as we see adjustments in those spaces. And then finally, we talked about our new website that we launched to help people be connected to all those resources. That's at engage.buncombecounty.org/Buncombe Recovers. You don't have to remember that vanity URL. You can just go to engage.buncombecounty.org or buncombeready.org. We'll get you there. And it has all of this information, all of our presentations, calendar of events, live streaming options if we have community meetings that we want to live stream. And you can also sign up directly for updates. There's that sign up box that you see in the lower corner. If you sign up for those updates, as we have new information, we will email it directly to you. And so that's one of the benefits of that site and how it's launched, to really help make sure people can get that in their inboxes if that's something that they want. And so we can keep connecting on a regular basis, even when we aren't having meetings out in the community. I told you I wouldn't be long. Questions?
Thank you, Lillian. These materials do look really fantastic. Thanks.
Oh, yes. And all of the data that has been referenced in these presentations, you'll find in the appendix section, and all of those presentations are on that website as a repository. And so that's really, if people want to slice and dice and deep dive on some of the data that they're hearing top line overviews on in these presentations, that is all contained within the appendix information on those sites.
Great. Thank you.
And Commissioner, we have one late break-in.
Yeah, I'm going to ask Ryan Cole to come up to share some information with you that we are releasing right now.
Right as he speaks. So this is breaking news.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, Chair, and Ms. Pender. I'm Ryan Cole, breaking news from Emergency Services. We do have a fire in Leicester right now. It's up on Peapie Cove Road off of South Turkey Creek. Approximately 8 acres, about 20% contained. They do have crews at the head of the fire to be able to try to minimize that. We're also using water drops with air tankers and helicopters at this time. We have dozers, hand crews, and saw crews in the woods that's working through this, and approximately 43 people with North Carolina Forest Service, Buncombe County Emergency Management, Fire Marshal's Office, assisting Leicester Fire Department with this. We do have 2 structures that have been protected, and at this time we don't have any other structures that are threatened with the location and topography. We also had another one earlier on Pisgah Highway at the 500 block in Candler. A small fire is now under control. And we also had another one in Jupiter off of I-26. I'm sure a lot of you seen the information that we're in high fire danger due to the humidity and winds that are coming in. And this is something that we have a lot of people working on and doing some technological looks at fire danger and fire risk that's supporting us from the National Climatic Data Center to NC State University and several other people that you're going to hear a lot more information about in the future, that's assisting us to identify fire hazard and fire danger zones that we're working through to prepare for, especially next fire season. We have a lot of debris that's in the forest now. A lot of that is not extremely dry yet, but come this fall into next spring, it's going to be a significant fire hazard. And we've got a lot of resources that we're trying to tap into to mitigate those fire hazards for our residents in Buncombe County.
Ryan, thank you. This is terrible to hear, and considering what we've been through, also not surprising. And just first want to say thank you to you and all of our first responders and firefighters across the county who are responding to these fires today. We are truly grateful. As we move into spring, summer, and fall, what recommendations do you have for the residents across Buncombe County to prepare for more potential fires?
So the greatest, the most important thing that anybody can do is provide defendable space around their homes. Clear out at least 100 feet. We recommend 200 feet away from your homes to provide that defendable space, and have grass growing in that area because green grass, the fire's not going to cross, whereas if there's leaf litter and brush on the ground, mulch, I know a lot of people don't like to mow, so they plant a lot of mulch, but fire's going to burn through mulch, whereas the green grass, it will not come through. And so that's one of the things, the most important thing we can do. The other thing is be patient with Dane and all of the people getting this debris up. I know a lot of people are going to be starting to try to burn some of their things. Wait until the leaves turn green before we start burning, and we have high humidity and good moisture on the ground to prevent those fires from having embers that are setting off other fires. The other thing is, as we go through and work through this, make sure that anything that we're doing, when we are doing burning, we're safe with that, and try to minimize that. Right now, your debris can be picked up as long as it gets out to the roadway. We get it to the right-of-way, somebody's going to pick it up. If you can't get it to the right-of-way, you can apply for the personal property debris removal, and they'll get it to the right-of-way for you. Utilize those services. I know it takes a lot of patience. There's a lot of debris out there, but let's get this debris out of our community instead of it standing here awaiting a fire in the future.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
he set me up to talk about debris. We are working on an opportunity for you, commissioners, to go out to one of those waterway debris removal operations so that you can see it firsthand, and I'll follow up with more information. I stepped out just a minute ago to discuss logistics with Army Corps to help get you there. So look for that coming soon, and we'll get you out.
Thanks, Lillian.
That's our agenda.
And that is the agenda. I thank you all. Thanks to all the staff for being here to give us a very thorough presentation and update on Helene recovery and some great questions and discussion here. I know we do have an open discussion item that we need to take a few minutes to discuss as a board. As everyone knows, we had a school consolidation study, and there is an opportunity for us as a Board of Commissioners to work on submitting a letter to accompany the consolidation study, and Commissioner Sloan has started a draft of a letter for us to take under consideration, and everyone should have a copy of that in front of them now. And I'll let Commissioner Sloan say anything that he would like to say. We'll open some discussion. If we do decide to move forward on this letter, we will need to, by consent, add this to our 5 p.m. agenda and get a copy of it posted online as quickly as we can and make some decisions this evening. Commissioner Sloan?
Yeah, just briefly, I'll just add, I tried to draft something in response to the study that was conducted fantastically by our staff, and thank you for the community members who participated. The intent of the letter is for it to be sent to the authors of the local bill, and I'll take this time to ask any staff in the room that might know the answer to who we need to address this letter to, because it doesn't have a name quite yet. So that would be great by this evening's meeting. Otherwise, the letter focuses on the recommendations made by Prismatic, and I think our intent to generally agree with the recommendations and follow through with a lot of the recommendations, and simply to send this back to the legislature along with the study.
So for the folks who are listening and watching, we have highlighted several key findings that we want to note were important to us, which are the demographic trends of both school districts and that they're experiencing shifts in populations. The second is the interesting information that we learned on facility utilization and the imbalance in that facility usage between both school districts. And also noting the public opinion of consolidation, that the adults in our community had a strong desire to maintain unique identities between Asheville City and Buncombe County schools. And as we move forward through this draft letter, I'll read a couple of these highlights. With the insights gained from the school consolidation study, Buncombe County aims to achieve the following system-wide improvements and financial efficiencies. We have discussed that we support the shared services and the 2 school districts initiating discussions on expanding those shared services, including, not limited to, child nutrition, transportation, and facilities maintenance, and reporting the conclusions to the County Commission, facility optimization, and that relates back to the demographic and enrollment trends identified by Prismatic, and asking the 2 school districts to assess opportunities to optimize facility usage and implement strategic school closures while ensuring appropriate class sizes and equitable access to education. We support the component around collaborative planning, long-term budgeting that the County Commission, in partnership with our 2 school boards, will work toward a 5-year forward-looking budget planning document updated annually. And lastly, enrollment flexibility, asking both boards to work together to revisit enrollment practices and boundary lines, particularly as we heard a lot about the differences between the ACS and BCS boundaries, to address those legacy issues and provide flexibility for families. Commissioners, are there questions, edits, concerns? Do we have a consensus to move forward this evening? Commissioner Wells. We need your mic.
And is our intent to work with both the school boards and hope that we all sign on this together?
I think we are all nodding that I believe Dr. Furman has reached out to Avril, that Asheville City Schools discussed last night as a board submitting a letter. I think they're interested in a joint possibility with us. I know that Chair Elliott from Buncombe County Schools is looking at our draft as well to take to his board. So the goal would be that all three governing bodies would sign on to this letter supporting the findings of the consolidation study.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for that question.
And Madam Chair, to add something to tonight's agenda via unanimous consent, do we do that right now, or do we do that at the beginning of the?
You'll do that at the beginning.
Okay.
All right.
I would just note, I think the one key piece of this, as we looked through what families, what students, what parents were, and administrators and teachers were concerned about, was how this would impact student learning and student experience. And I think it's important, since that is, top of mind for folks, I think we should also include that the study found no significant impacts to student learning. And just kind of, we got the cost concerns in there, but I think elevating that key piece of how this impacts children across the county would be a benefit as well.
It's a great point. And where would you recommend that we add that piece, Commissioner Ball? Maybe under those three highlighted several key findings, we can add a fourth on page 1.
Yeah, I think page 1 kind of up there at the top, potentially where we talk about the findings that show that it'd be some very little or no cost savings. We could also maybe put a piece in there about student learning outcomes.
The concern I have with that is, though, we can't ignore the historical achievement gap that has been going on for the last 30 years, or longer, really. And I fought that for 8 years on the school board. And as far as the letter's concerned, I think it's a good first step. But, folks, we're putting off the inevitable. I read that report twice, and if you read it, we're just running, kicking the can right over to the cliff, and we're going to leave a mess for future commissioners to clean it up. Because when they fail, they're going to have to come to us or to you all, because it will be a mess. But let's not lose track of that. I think what we're talking about is a good first step, but it's not going to solve the problem.
Heard. Any further suggestions? I'll look down, see head shaking.
Is the achievement gap mentioned in this paper?
It is not. The student achievement and the student outcomes was not mentioned.
Can we add that to our letter?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be the fourth bullet.
And I think that's in the comprehensive plan, and that's our North Star. That's really, at the end of the day, what we owe to our students.
We will add that between now and our 5 o'clock meeting. Is there any, it's easy. Is there any additional discussion? All right, commissioners, we are adjourned until 5 p.m. Thanks, everyone.